I flicked the lights on. Red and blue reflections bounced across the rear window of the old truck in front of me. It was a beat-up Dodge, the kind held together by rust and prayer. The driver didn't pull over right away. That always puts you on edge. Then, finally, he veered off to the shoulder, grinding gravel beneath worn-out tires. Routine stop, I told myself. Broken tail light. I approached cautiously, hand resting near my holster. The sun was setting behind me, casting long shadows on the pavement. It should have been just another ticket. But the moment I saw the back of his head, something twisted in my stomach. Familiarity. A flicker of something I hadn't felt in 2 decades. I cleared my throat. "Evening, sir. License and registration, please." His hands trembled as he passed them to me. And there it was. The name. Derek Thomas. My hand froze. Time stopped. My father. I stepped back. My heart was pounding so loud I couldn't hear the traffic behind me. I looked again at the ID in my hand, then at the man in the driver's seat. Gray hair, gaunt face, eyes hollow but still blue, just like mine. I hadn't seen him in 18 years. I was 9 when he left. My legs felt weak. My training kicked in. Stay calm, stay composed, follow protocol. But my soul was screaming. He looked up, finally meeting my eyes. His expression shifted, confusion, disbelief, then something else. Regret. "Logan," he whispered, barely audible. I didn't answer. I just stood there, staring at the man who taught me to ride a bike, and later taught me what abandonment felt like. This was the man I'd prayed about as a boy, cursed in my teens, and tried to forget in my 20s. And now, here he was, sitting on the side of the road in a rusted-out truck, shaking, sweating, looking at me like I was both his ghost and his judge. I wanted to speak, to yell, to ask, "Why me?" But nothing came. So I did the only thing I could. I walked back to my squad car, sat in the seat, closed the door, took a deep breath, and suddenly I was 9 years old again. Before the badge, before the bitterness, before the traffic stop and the storm in my chest, I was just a boy who loved his dad. I remember Saturday mornings best. My mom would be asleep after a long hospital shift, and Dad would take me to the lake with a cooler full of sandwiches and a cheap fishing pole. We never caught anything, but we'd sit for hours, tossing rocks, talking about nothing and everything. He used to call me Champ, not because I was good at anything in particular, just because he believed in me. Or maybe he needed me to believe in him. When I was 7, I fell off my bike and scraped my entire leg. I cried the whole way home. He didn't laugh. He didn't tell me to toughen up. He knelt beside me and said, "It's okay to bleed a little, Champ. It means you're still alive." That stuck with me longer than it should have. We were never rich, but we had love. We had late-night cartoons and burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings. We had bedtime stories and whispered prayers. And I believed him when he said, "I'll always be here, buddy." But life has a way of rewriting its promises. When I turned 8, things started to shift. He came home later, smelled like places I didn't recognize, started forgetting things. My school recital, my birthday. Once, he left me at soccer practice. My coach had to call Mom to pick me up. I waited an hour on that bench, trying not to cry. He stopped coming to church, stopped praying at night, stopped looking us in the eyes, and then came the yelling. At first, it was just between him and Mom, whisper arguments in the hallway. But then, things escalated, slammed doors, shattered plates, words too sharp for a kid to hear. One night, I woke up to Mom sitting in the kitchen alone, crying silently. She was holding something, a photo of our family at the lake. Her hands were shaking. I asked her, "Is Daddy sick?" She didn't answer, just pulled me close and said, "Jesus is still with us." That's when I started praying on my own. I'd kneel by the window, looking up at the stars and whisper, "Please, bring my dad back." But he didn't come back. Not really. I was 10 the last time I saw him as my father. He had come home late again, eyes bloodshot, shirt half untucked, muttering nonsense under his breath. Mom had already locked the bedroom door. I was in the living room, pretending to sleep on the couch. He stumbled past me and dropped into the recliner. After a long silence, he looked at me and said, "You still love me, champ." I wanted to say yes. I wanted to run to him, hug him, believe it was still him under all that mess. But I just nodded, eyes closed tight. The next morning, he was gone. His keys were missing. So was the car, and the envelope of rent money my mom kept in the kitchen drawer. At first, I thought it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he went to work early. Maybe he'd bring breakfast back. Maybe he'd walk in and say it was all a bad dream. But days passed, then weeks, and nothing. The police came once asking questions. Mom tried to hold herself together, but I could see her unraveling. I heard her on the phone with someone from church whispering, "I think he's using again. I don't know where he is. I don't know who he is anymore." Eventually, we stopped talking about him. We stopped talking, period. I learned to navigate the silence. I'd come home from school, do my homework, heat up leftovers, and fall asleep with the TV on. Mom worked extra shifts. I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She tried to smile for me, but it never reached her soul. And inside me, something hardened, a strange mix of anger and ache. I started blaming myself. Was I not enough? Was I too loud, too needy, too naive? I replayed our last conversation over and over, that drunk, half-whispered question, "You still love me, champ?" Eventually, the sadness turned to something colder. I stopped praying for him to come home. I started praying to forget him. Middle school felt like walking through fog. Everyone else had someone cheering in the stands. Everyone else had someone to fix their bike or teach them to shave. I had silence, and the sound of my mom trying not to cry behind her closed door. I became the quiet kid. Not because I didn't have things to say, but because no one seemed to want to hear them. I stopped asking questions in class, stopped raising my hand, stopped smiling in pictures, but I watched everything. I watched the way other boys looked up to their dads at school events. I watched the way coaches clapped their sons on the back. I watched TV shows where families made up after fights and wished life worked that way. Mom did her best. She worked double shifts, packed my lunches, left Bible verses on sticky notes in my backpack. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He will never leave you nor forsake you. But some nights, when the loneliness crept in, I wasn't so sure. One night in high school, I came home to find our kitchen window broken. Someone had tried to break in. I grabbed a bat and walked through the house, heart pounding. Nothing was missing, just glass and fear. Mom came home later, and I saw her panic when she saw the mess. But then, just like always, she straightened her back, swept the glass, and made tea like nothing happened. That night, something clicked inside me. I was tired of feeling powerless, tired of watching things fall apart. I told her, "I'm going to be a cop one day." She looked up from her tea, surprised. "You sure?" I nodded. Someone needs to protect the ones no one protects. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she whispered, "Just don't lose your heart in the process." Becoming a police officer wasn't easy, but pain has a way of fueling perseverance. At the academy, I ran harder, studied longer, fought smarter. I wasn't the biggest or the fastest, but I refused to quit. Some of the guys said I had a chip on my shoulder. Maybe I did. Maybe I still do. But when I put on that badge for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Out on the streets, I saw what addiction does. I saw broken homes, overdoses, kids hiding under beds, and I remembered. I remembered being the kid waiting on a dad who never came back. I remembered the quiet ache, the unanswered prayers, but I didn't let myself feel too much. Feelings get in the way in this line of work. You learn to compartmentalize, to shut the door on your memories, until one day, that door swings wide open. It was supposed to be a routine stop, a rusted-out truck with a busted taillight. Late at night, residential street. Nothing unusual. I pulled up behind him, flipped on the lights, and waited. He didn't move, didn't fumble for anything, didn't lean out the window, just sat there. I approached slowly, hand resting near my holster. My partner stayed in the car, typing the plate number. I tapped the glass. He rolled the window down, and everything around me went still. It was him. Older, rougher, gray stubble, sunken eyes. But it was him. My father. I froze. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My training screamed at me to keep control. Keep your voice steady. Keep your posture firm. But my heart was pounding loud enough to drown it all out. License and registration, I managed, voice flat. He looked up at me, really looked. His eyes widened. "Son?" That word hit like a punch to the chest. I didn't answer. He fumbled for his wallet. His hands trembled. I took the ID without comment. It confirmed what I already knew. My father. After all these years. "You know why I pulled you over?" I asked, slipping into the script I knew too well. "No taillight," he muttered. "Correct." There was silence. Too long, too heavy. Then he added, barely above a whisper, "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." I stared at him. This man, who had left me, broken my family, vanished, now sitting in front of me like nothing had happened. "I didn't think you cared," I said, more to myself than to him. His eyes welled up. "I cared. I was ashamed." I swallowed hard. I wanted to scream, to ask why, to drag out every excuse, every lie. But we were on duty. My partner was watching. The dash cam was rolling. So instead, I said, "Stay in the vehicle. I'll be right back." I sat behind the wheel, hands gripping it tight. "What's up?" my partner asked, eyes scanning the screen. "Just a busted taillight," I said. I didn't elaborate. How do you explain to someone that you just pulled over the ghost of your past, that the man in the truck once held you on his shoulders and then disappeared. That part of you wants to hug him, and the other part wants to never see him again. I took a few breaths, long ones, then stepped out. "No warrants," I said, handing back his papers. "But you need to fix that light." He nodded. Then, softer, "Can we talk?" I hesitated. He added, "I'm clean now. Been sober 5 years. I live a few blocks away. I go to church. I've been praying for this." I didn't trust him, but something in his voice, the crack in it, sounded like truth, like the man I remembered. I looked down at the citation pad, then tore the page off. "No ticket," I said. He looked stunned. "Meet me," I said. "Tomorrow. Coffee shop on 7th and Maple, noon." He blinked. "You sure?" "I'm not, but I'll be there." Then I turned and walked away. The next day, I got there early. I picked a booth in the back, facing the door, nursing a black coffee that had long gone cold. My stomach was tight. My hands wouldn't stop moving, tapping, adjusting, wiping non-existent crumbs off the table. Part of me was still sure he wouldn't come. The other part was terrified that he would. At exactly 12:03, the bell over the door jingled. I looked up. He walked in slowly, holding his cap in his hands. Same wrinkled jacket, same cautious eyes. He saw me. I nodded. He approached. "Thanks for coming," he said, voice low. "I almost didn't," I replied honestly. He sat down across from me, avoiding eye contact for a moment. "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me." I shrugged. Neither was I. Silence again. Then he looked up. "You look good. Strong. You always wanted to be a cop?" I nodded. "Since the day you left." That landed. He swallowed hard. "I didn't leave because of you," he said. "I left because I hated what I had become. I thought it would be easier on you and your mom if I was just gone." "It wasn't," I said sharply. "It wasn't easier. It was a war zone." His eyes filled with tears. I know. I was a coward." I didn't argue. Then he leaned forward, elbows on the table. "But I got help. I found this little church in Tulsa. They fed me, housed me, let me sleep on a pew. I didn't believe in anything then. But there was this old pastor, Pastor Ray. He prayed with me every day. He said, 'The Lord isn't done with you, son. He's just waiting for you to turn around.'" He chuckled. At first I thought he was crazy, but something kept me coming back. I was quiet, listening, watching. I've been clean 5 years. I've got a job now. Nothing fancy. Warehouse work. I rent a little room above the shop. I don't drink. I don't lie. I pray, and every night I've asked God to forgive me and give me one chance to look my son in the eyes again. I stared at him. That part broke something in me. I had prayed too, not every night, but enough. Some prayers were angry, some desperate, some hollow. But deep down, I had prayed for this moment, even if I didn't believe it would come. He leaned back. "I'm not asking to be your dad again. I know I lost that right. I just want to know if there's a chance you could forgive me." My throat was tight. "I don't know," I said. "I want to, but I don't know how." He nodded. That's fair. Another silence. Then I asked, why didn't you ever call? I was afraid, he said. Afraid you'd tell me you hated me. Afraid I'd drag you back into my mess. I had to become someone else first. I looked down at my hands. I used to dream about you coming back, I said. When I was a kid, every time I saw a man with your build, I thought it was you. Then I'd remember. You left on purpose. You chose to leave. He nodded, eyes filled with grief. I did, and I've regretted it every day since. We sat there in silence, the hum of the diner, plates clinking, silverware tapping, but around us, a stillness, a kind of holy pause. I can't promise anything, I said finally, but I'm willing to start. He smiled, a tired, hopeful smile. That's more than I deserve. We talked for another hour about my mom, my training, my beat, his church, his job. He didn't push. He didn't cry or beg. He just showed up, sat with me, answered my questions, let the silence happen when it needed to. And when we stood to leave, he didn't ask for a hug, but I gave him one anyway. It was stiff, awkward, but real. He whispered, "Thank you," into my shoulder, and for the first time since I was a child, I felt something shift inside me. Not healing, not yet, but the beginning of it. Forgiveness doesn't happen in a single moment. It isn't a light switch. It's a slow walk. Some days you take a step forward. Other days you sit down and refuse to move. And sometimes you walk backward, wondering why you started in the first place. After that day in the diner, we agreed to meet once a month. Neutral places, coffee shops, parks, sometimes just a phone call. The first few meetings were tense. He talked. I mostly listened. Then I'd get angry. Some comment would trigger a memory I had buried. I'd lash out. He'd take it, always patient, always quiet after. Then he'd say, "I understand." And I hated that phrase. No, I wanted to say, "You don't understand. You don't know what it was like growing up thinking I wasn't worth staying for, watching Mom cry herself to sleep, feeling like the man I looked up to had vanished, and I had to become one before I was ready." But in time, I stopped saying those things, not because they weren't true, but because I had said them enough. And he had heard them. Now it was time to listen to something else. One day, months later, I asked, "Did you ever try to come back? Before the diner?" He looked down at his hands. Once, about 6 years ago, I stood across the street from your old house. You were in the yard. You were tall, in shape. I could tell you were training for something. I was in police academy then, I said. He nodded. You looked strong, confident. I didn't want to ruin that. That wasn't your choice to make, I replied, but softer this time. He nodded again. I know. I was scared. He told me about the jobs he held, the people he stayed with, the times he almost gave up, how one winter he lived in a tent behind a mechanic's shop, how he almost froze to death until a stranger, a woman named Donna, brought him soup every day. She didn't ask questions. She just fed me and prayed. Eventually, he said, I didn't think I'd ever be clean. Then one night, I woke up in the middle of the street, bleeding. I had no idea how I got there. I remember looking up and thinking, This is it. This is how I die. But he didn't die. A young man passing by, an EMT off duty, stopped and helped him. That night, he was admitted to a shelter. Pastor Ray found him the next day. "I always think about that kid," he said. "He didn't know me, but he saved me." The biggest turning point came when I introduced him to my mother again. She had remarried years ago to a kind man named Thomas. He was good to her, steady, supportive. And when I told her about Dad reaching out, she hesitated, but she didn't object. She saw the change in me, the softening. And so one Sunday afternoon, I brought him to her porch. He stood there like a boy being sent to the principal's office, head down, hands fidgeting. When she opened the door, her expression was unreadable. He said nothing at first. Then, "Linda, I'm sorry." And she didn't respond for a long moment. Then she nodded. "You look tired." He smiled sadly. "I'm better now." She invited him in. That visit was short, quiet, a few polite questions, a few awkward glances. But after he left, she looked at me and said, "He's not the man who left us." "No," I said. "But maybe he's the man God always meant him to be." She didn't argue. She just said, "Well, then let's see what God does next." Over time, the walls kept falling. He never asked for money, never asked to be in my life full time. He just showed up. To birthdays, to graduation, to the hospital when I broke my arm during a foot chase. He sat in the waiting room for 4 hours just to say, "I'm proud of you." And slowly, I began to believe it. We started praying together. He never forced it. But one night, I called and said, "Can you pray for me? I lost a kid today. OD. Couldn't get to him in time." He did. His voice trembled, but his prayer was strong. "Lord, give my son peace. Let him know he is doing your work. Let the weight of the world not harden his heart. Let him sleep tonight, knowing you carry what he cannot." I wept, and for the first time I felt like I had a father again. People think redemption means erasing the past. It doesn't. It means the past no longer holds you hostage. I still remember the nights I cried myself to sleep, the birthdays he missed, the confusion, the anger. But now I remember other things too. The way he shows up now, the way he listens, the way he holds space for everything, even the hard things, and doesn't run anymore. He's not perfect. I'm not either. But we're walking forward, together. And that's more than I ever thought possible. Years passed. Seasons changed. Life kept moving. But some moments etched themselves in your soul forever. Mine came on a warm autumn afternoon, standing in front of a group of cadets at the police academy. I had been invited to speak to the incoming class about resilience, about surviving the job without losing your soul. I told them stories about the streets, about people I'd lost, about one boy in particular whose mother called every week for years, hoping he'd been found. Then I paused and said, "He was found, but not by us. He was found by grace." I didn't explain further. Some things you carry quietly. Afterward, I walked outside and saw him, my father, sitting on a bench under a tree, a lunch bag beside him. He waved like a kid at recess. I walked over and sat down. "I heard most of it," he said. "You tell stories well." "I get it from you," I replied. We sat in silence. Then he reached into the bag and handed me a sandwich. "I packed your favorite," he said. "Turkey, no mustard. I remember." I took it, smiled. "I'm proud of you," he added. I'd heard it before, many times, but this time I looked him in the eye and said, "I know." A few months later, I got a call. A domestic disturbance. Routine. But this one got messy fast. The suspect pulled a weapon. Backup was delayed. I defused it. Barely. That night, instead of calling a buddy or my mom, I called him. He didn't answer right away. Then, "Hey, son." I didn't say anything at first. Then I whispered, "I thought I was going to die tonight." He didn't offer platitudes. He didn't quote scripture. He just said, "Thank you for coming home." And I realized I had, not just to him, but to myself. Later that year, on Father's Day, he stood up in church and shared a testimony. He rarely spoke publicly, preferred the quiet ministry of service. But this day, he wanted to honor what God had done. He stood at the front, holding the mic with trembling hands. "I was a terrible father," he began. "I hurt the people I loved. I ran from responsibility, from pain, from God." He paused, voice cracking. "But God never ran from me. And one day, He gave me back my son. Not because I earned it, not because I deserved it, but because He's good." The room was silent. Then he said, "If you're here today and you've lost someone to drugs, to pride, to sin, don't stop praying. Don't stop believing. Because sometimes miracles don't come with lightning. They come with a knock on the door." He stepped down, and I hugged him, right there, in front of everyone. 2 years later, I had a son. We named him Elias. When I handed him to my father for the first time, his hands shook. He held Elias close and whispered something in his ear. I didn't ask what he said. Some prayers are private. But later he told me, "I prayed that I'd live long enough to teach him what I couldn't teach you." I said, "You're already doing that." Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's remembering without bleeding. It's living in the same house where the fire once burned, but with new paint, new walls, new warmth. It's choosing to love, even when love costs something. And it always does. He's older now, slower, but still sharp, still gentle, still showing up. When Elias turned 5, my dad built him a toy chest with his hands. Took weeks. When he gave it to him, Elias opened it, wide-eyed. "What's this for, Grandpa?" My father smiled. "For your treasures." And later, I found a photo of me and my dad inside that box. Not from the past, but from now. Us fishing last summer, side by side, smiling. If you asked me years ago if I thought this story would end like this, I would have laughed, or cried, or both. Because for a long time, this wasn't a story. It was just a wound. But now it's a testimony, a living reminder that no one is too far gone, that restoration is possible, that prayer still changes everything, like the father in Luke 15, running to his son, embracing him with no questions, just love. I see that father now, not just in scripture, but in real life. I saw him walk back into my life, and I learned to run toward Him. To anyone listening who carries pain, resentment, a missing piece from a parent or child who walked away, I see you. God sees you. And He's not done writing your story. There is always hope, even in the silence, even in the waiting. Because one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day, there will be a knock on the door. And it just might be the miracle you've been praying for.